Okay, here we go. Hopefully this works. This has been a battle to get this video together. This is my fourth time recording it. It's about, I feel like it's 40 minutes every time. And every time I finish, it's broken. So hopefully this time it won't be. Okay, so this video we're going to talk about Fetch and its various uses. And so let's just get started. So the first thing, to demonstrate this, we are going to use an API that we build. This is going to it's going to touch on things that are outside the scope of this course, but that's okay. We're not going to do anything terribly technical, but this is stuff that I think is taught in CSE 341 or 342 backend node programming, and so we're going to do some basic API design, and in order to do this we're going to use this Express library. So right here on the right, if you just go to expressjs.com, you can kind of see some guides on how to install, and then some like basic routing type things. And so you'll see here get, post, put, delete. These are the things that we read about last week, or 2 weeks ago at this point, when we read about Fetch, right? And so we're gonna use these in this tutorial. So for this tutorial, we're going to continue working on the My Chore list, and just a reminder, previously we used local storage to store all these things, to store our chores. Now we're going to use this backend API server, okay? So we're going to be using Fetch to get our list of chores, to add to our list of chores, to delete, and to update, okay? And we'll show how that works. Now, just to get started, let me just briefly show what my server looks like, my API, okay? I have these two functions here that I created, read JSON and write JSON. They're very similar to our local storage functions that we wrote, but these ones are going to write to a JSON file on the back end, okay? And that's this file right now. It's just an empty array because we don't have anything, okay? And when I write to it, I'm going to take the data, stringify it, so serialize it as a string, and then I'm going to write it to that file, okay? And we'll see that working in a minute. Just to continue showing kind of what we have here, we have a get endpoint, okay? So API/chores get, okay? That's going to read all of our chores and return them to me, return them to the browser, okay? We have this get single chore by ID, which I don't think we're going to really fill out at all here in this tutorial, but I just wanted to kind of show how that works. So usually APIs have a resource, that's what chores is, and then and so in this case we're getting all of the resources, all of the chores, and in this case we're getting a single resource by ID, so maybe chores /123 or whatever the ID is, okay? And then we have for creating a new chore, that's a post, okay? So you get to read, you post to create, and again, you just post to the list of resource, and then we're gonna create it, okay? I've created these two already, just to save some time, but these next two are the ones that we're gonna fill in. And so that's a put, which is the way that we update a chore, and you'll see that we have an ID here, and that's because we need to know what chore we're going to update. And a delete, and delete just deletes, and again we need to know chore to use, and so we are going to pass an ID as well. Okay, so then let's just go look at our list again, our chore list. If you recall from previous videos, previously we had some stuff, some code here to go and get from local storage and add to local storage. Here now you'll see that we have a post, and so let's look at how we're getting the data first, okay? So we're fetching the chores with this simple fetch, right? This is a vanilla fetch, no extra parameters or options, and yeah, and you'll see that we parse the result body as JSON, and then we set the chores to whatever we get back. And so when I come in here and I hit refresh, I'm not getting anything, and that's because our database is empty. Okay, so if we come back over to here, we have all this code that was used from last time. Essentially, it's just cleaning up our data as we enter it. We trim it. We make sure that it doesn't already exist, and then if it doesn't, and we hit enter, we're going to post it. Okay, and you'll see this is a fetch function that is a little bit more verbose. Okay, because there's some things here that we need to tell it in order to handle it correctly on the back end. So we need to say, hey, this is a post. Okay, so that's what this method is. And then we have to set some things for cores to make sure that the post is handled properly. And then a header, this is telling the server what type of data we're sending. So in this case, JSON, because it only can be sent as a string. Okay, because this is going to transfer as just like a blob of string to the server, and so the body is just a string, but we're telling the server with this header that to parse it as JSON. Okay, and so when it gets to the server, it's going to take that string and turn it into a JSON object and then do stuff with it, and I'll show you that in a second. And that's kind of it. So let's come over here, and if we just do like a clean room, okay, it gets added to our list, and if we look in here, we have an ID, clean room, and it's complete false. Okay, those are this is the default. The clean room comes from this input, and then the ID I just kind of I just increment. So it's not a great way to make IDs, but we'll see that later. So now let's look at the code a little bit more in detail. So the get, and if we return this, or refresh this, it's going to return. Okay, and it's going to, we could go to a different computer and access this computer, and we would see it, right? Because it's on the server, it's not on local storage. This can be, I can publish this to a server on the internet, and it would work. Okay. And so it's very simple for the get. We're just reading the JSON file and returning it. So that's just reading this and returning it just as it is. If we come down over here to network, you'll see that it's getting this chores, and it is just an array with that same stuff in it. Okay, and then. And so that's the get. Now the post is a little bit more interesting. So we're posting a text, an object with text in it, and then the text. So clean room in our case. Okay. When that hits the server, we're going to read the JSON, the current database, the current data. We're going to, like I said, I just create IDs in a kind of a not great way, but I just take the number of items and then add one. Okay, that's fine for very basic stuff, but we'll see how that kind of fails in a bit. Then I'm going to push onto that chores array that I read a new item, which has the ID, has the text from the body, which is the text, and then we default is complete to false. Okay, and then I write it back to the file chores using my helper, which is just up here. Okay, and then I return a 201 created. Okay, that's very typical for a post. You'll get a 201 back that just says the resource was created. Okay, in the in the get, we return a 200 and say the resource was, it was okay, right? 200 is okay, so things are good. If it wasn't found for some reason, let's say that API chores isn't a resource, let's say API bananas, we would return a 404, right? It's not found, okay? Things like that. So we're going to be talking mostly, hopefully, about 200 level HTTP responses, statuses, because those are the successful ones. Okay, so now let's start looking at this put. Let's say that we want to be able to have a checkbox here on this chore list that allows us to say whether or not a chore is complete. Okay, because we have this is complete, and it's always going to be false now because we don't have any way to update them. So let's add a couple more chores. Laundry, vacuum, do dishes. Okay, so we have these just to show that they're here. Okay, they all got added there. Okay, and then we want checkboxes that we can check. So let's go into here, and we'll come down here, and let's just add a checkbox to this. So input, and we are going to have type equals checkbox, and I think that's fine for now. And then let's come over here, refresh. Okay, we have some checkboxes. Okay, we can check them, but if we refresh, it doesn't do anything. Okay, so one thing that we have is our chore object has and is complete. Okay, so we want to come over here and map that is complete onto this checkbox. So we can say checked equals, and again, just a reminder, this is React, so don't worry so much about this, but chore dot is complete. Okay, so that's going to map that there, but the problem is it's always false. Okay, so now if I click this, I really get, I can't even change it, because if you look down here, checked is bound to is complete, but we're not ever changing it, right? We don't have an on change, and so every time this renders, it's going to be false, and it's always going to show up as false. So obviously we need to change that, and that's the whole point, right? We want it to change. So we're going to do an on change, and I've already done a couple stub functions here. So we have this one that handle chore state change, and it takes a chore ID and then the event. Okay, and actually let's make this a little bit simpler. Instead of the event, let's just do checked. Okay, so that's going to be whether or not it's checked. And so what we're going to pass here is we're going to pass an event. Okay, that's what gets passed into this function, and we are going to call handle state change. Okay, let me just hit that so that this can get so that we can see this a little bit better. Okay, so we're going to handle that, and then we need to pass the chore ID and whether or not it's checked. Okay, and the chore ID we have in the chore, you can see here the key, and so we can just pass the chore ID. Okay, just like that, and then to get whether or not it's checked, we can look into the event, target, and then checked. Okay, and that is a React thing. I think in normal HTML we have to look at the value, right? But in this case, we're just going to look at this. And now if I refresh, it's not going to do anything still. But if we come up here and add some debugging, we are going to be able to see the chore ID and checked. Okay. Checked. What did I import? Check. That's not what I want. Actually, I don't think we need either of these anymore. So okay. And we don't need that either. That's all old stuff from local storage days. Okay. So if we come back down here, we just have a little handler. And let's refresh this and hit it. And we can see that it's wanting to be true, but we're just not doing anything else. Right? So we see the ID, and then we see the true. Okay. So what we need to do here is we need to put that change to the server. So I'm just going to copy this this fetch here and use it just down here to help us a little bit. Okay, and you'll notice this is already an async function, so we can just throw that right in there. Okay, we don't need this anymore. Okay, now a little bit different, a couple of things that are different. This is going to be a put, okay, because we're updating. So we're going to change that. Again, remember, a get is for reading one or more, a list of resources or a single resource. Post is for creating resources. Put or patch, we won't talk about patch today, are for updating resources. And delete is for deleting resources, okay? So we are updating, so we're going to put. We have a chore ID. And so if we remember, we need that chore ID here in the URL, in the endpoint. So we are going to put it right in here using a template. Okay, and that gives us that. And then for the body, we just want is complete, and then set that value to checked. Okay, is complete. Then set it to checked. Okay. Okay, so that should get us to where we are now currently passing the stuff to the server, but you'll see it doesn't work yet because we're not doing anything on the server. To get these to look right, it needs to update on the server. Then we're going to refetch the list, and then when we refetch it, that value is going to be true. Okay, but on our server here, we have a nice little to-do, okay, on the put. And so if I come in here and let's just look and see what we're getting from the front end. So we'll do a get or a console debug, and then we want to see the ID and the value, just like we did on the front end, but this is on the server. So we're going to get it by doing the request params, okay, and ID. That's coming from this segment of the URL, okay. And then if we do a request body, okay, the body is going to be JSON because we're telling it the content type is JSON, okay. And so the body is going to be this object, and so we just can say is complete, okay. So if we come in here and do body is complete, we are going to let's see here. If we come down here, this is where it's going down in this area is where we should see these things. So if we click this, you see we're getting 1 true, 2 true, 3 true, 4 true, okay? So this is just exactly what we saw on the front end, but this is on the back end. So Now we just need to write some clever JavaScript, and we'll be done. So, similar to how we add a chore, we just want to update a chore, or update this chore list. So first we need to get the list of chores, and we'll use my helper function, read JSON. Okay, and then all we need to do is change the is complete to, let's see here, we need two things. So we need ID, and that's params ID, and then we need is complete equals request body is complete. Okay, we'll just store those there. Okay, so we're going to get the chores, and what we want to do is we want to create, let's do, at the end, after we've updated the chores, we want to write JSON, okay, and we'll write our chores. Now, this is not going to work as is. We're going to have to do something. And then we are going to send a status back, and usually when you're finished with a put, you just return an OK if it works. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. But we need, this is just going to return nothing's changed, right? Because we're just in this case, we're reading the JSON, writing the JSON exactly how it is, and that's it. What we need to do is we need to update this. And so we're going to use the array map function. Okay, so if we come over here, array map MDN. Okay, let's let that work for a second. Okay, and what array map does is it will run a function on every value in an array and create a new array with the response of that function. So in this case, in this demo here, we have this array 1 that has the integers 1, 4, 9, and 16 in it, and we map over it and we pass this function. So this x is going to be each element, 1, 4, 9, 16, and we're going to multiply it by 2. We get a new array out that's 2, 8, 18, and 32. Okay, we're going to do the same thing, but in our case, we just want to set the value of is complete to the updated one. So we're going to say map, and then we'll call it C for chore. Okay, and we're going to do this. We're going to say if c.id equals the ID that we're updating, we are going to say C is complete equals is complete, and then we're going to return C. Okay, so what that's saying is we're looping over every single item in the list. If the item in the list is equal to the ID that we're passing here to the endpoint, then set the is complete property on that object to what we pass here and then return it. So that's going to return a new list of updated chores. So now if we come in here, refresh, we get, let's see what's happening. Why is that restarting? Response status, send OK. Just make sure that we're good here. We're waiting that fetch, put, and then on chore list change. Aha. That's fine. Okay. Let's see what we have here. Are we getting, each time we put that, we're getting OK. So something's not happening correctly on this. chores equals, oh yeah, okay, so this is tricky, and I can't believe I forgot this, but I made this video 4 times. Okay, so it's coming back okay, but if we look in here, none of these are turning to true, and we got to figure out why. So the things that we would look is to make sure that is complete is actually true. So if we come in here and add ID and is complete again and do this, okay, so if we look down here and hit this, we're getting 1 and true. Okay, so it's not that. So that's interesting. But if we come down here, oh, it's because it's writing that. I guess it's refreshing every time because that. Okay, so that's right. It should be 1 true because I clicked on that first one. And then if we come into here, we would want to just make sure that this CID and the ID. Okay, so if I do that and click this, we're going to get 1 true and then 1 1, and those match, except it's kind of a hint here in my terminal. This is yellow and this is white. This is white and this is yellow. And that's because these are different types, okay? So maybe I didn't know that, but they look the same. So my next thing would be, well, I need to know what types these are. So if I look at my JSON file, these are integers, and I can see that that's integers, so that's easy. But what is this ID? So if I come over here and do a type of and run this, what are we going to get? String, 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 string. Okay, so obviously a string 1 and an integer 1 don't match, and that's why this logical gate isn't working. Now you might say, oh well, just change it to a double equals and then it will. I'm not a fan of that. I like to keep things strict, so I'm just going to do a plus right there. It's going to convert that to an ID or an integer, and actually I want that to be everywhere integer, because that's what my IDs are. So I'm going to come up here and put the plus, and that's just going to turn it into, that's just a quick way to turn something into an integer. So now if I come over here and click these, they update and change, and if we go back into our JSON data, you'll see that we have true and true, and if I click these, we'll see them change to true there, just right there in the file. Okay, so that's awesome, and that's put, right? So we have again, we're giving an ID, and then we're doing some stuff with it, and we're sending back okay. So now we want to do delete, same sort of thing. Okay, in this case, let's make a little button after this that that just deletes. Okay, so we'll have an X in that button. It's not going to be pretty, but that's okay. And then we'll have an on click, and we'll do something. Okay. Now this on click, we are going to do a similar thing. This is going to handle chore delete, and it's going to get a chore ID. Okay, so we'll do a similar thing. So we're going to say pass it function. We're going to handle chore delete, and we're going to pass it the chore ID. Okay. And then if we come up here and just let's come over here and we'll just console debug, oops, chore ID, and that should just, when we click on these buttons, these little buttons, we should just see 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, that's what we got there. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now we need to actually do delete. So again, I'm going to come up here and just copy this for the sake of my fingers. And paste it here. Okay, and again, just like put, we need that chore ID there in the endpoint. But here, let's do a delete. Okay, now we're not going to pass anything in the body. We don't need to, so we can get rid of this. It doesn't need to. The backend doesn't need to know what type of. It can just be plain text. That's fine, and we'll leave the others. Okay. So, well, you might say, how does it know which one to delete? Remember, we're putting it in this endpoint, okay? So in the API chores and then the resource ID, okay? So now if we come in here, again, we could just make sure that we're wired up correctly. I like doing this as I go, just so that I don't get too far into it and get confused, right? So I'm just going to do params and then ID and just make sure that in my server logs here that I'm getting the right thing. Okay, so if I click on one of these, we should get 3. Okay, so we got 3 down here. 1, 2, 4. Okay, good. So now if I come here, we just need to delete. Okay, and again, let's just copy this because we're essentially going to do the same thing, except for we're going to do a little bit different. And all the rest of this will be fine. To be the same, but we don't need this. Okay, we're going to get the ID, and we're not going to map this time because map doesn't really work for us here. We want to do something else, and essentially what we want to do is we want to create a new array with everything but the one with this ID. Okay, and so for that we can use this great little function called filter. Okay, and essentially what you do is you take an array like this list of words and you filter it and you pass it a function, and in this case anything that is true it's going to keep, and anything that is false it's going to throw away. And so in this case all words that are longer than 6 letters it's going to keep. Okay, and so you get exuberant, destruction, and present, but you don't get spray, limit, elite. Okay, and that's what limit does. So in our case, filter. Well, in our case, we're going to do filter, and we're going to pass it a C, and that represents every chore in our list. And we are going to say if we are going to return c.id is not equal to ID. Okay, what that means is everything that is equal is going to be false, and it's not going to be included in the new array. Everything that is equal or isn't equal is going to return true and be included. So if we come back over here now and refresh this bad boy and start deleting some of these, we are not going to have any chores to do, okay? So we can add and delete. Now, there is a little problem with this, and so if we come over here to data, it's empty, that's nice. But let me show you how this can be problematic in the way that I did it. So if we say chore 1, okay, we get chore 1. Let's say chore 2, and then chore 3, and then let's delete chore 2, and then add another one, chore 4. Okay, this is where the problem comes in. You'll see that I have two IDs that have 3. Okay, and that's what I was saying with those IDs. It's problematic because I'm just incrementing. So I incremented 1, 2, 3, got rid of 2, that kept 3, and now I have another 3. And so if I come over here and click, what's going to happen? I can either, when I click this, it's going to update both because they're both 3, and that's what I do all of my stuff on ID. And if I delete, it's going to delete both of them because they're both ID 3. It's doing what I told it to do. Okay, and so one way you can get around that is to maybe add some sort of random integer, of course, a random float or something in there. Of course, randomness isn't always random. I would, if you are ever going to look into this, I would suggest using some sort of UUID. That's a unique identifier that's going to be unique across everything, and there's some libraries and stuff that can do that. So, but yeah, so we have our working chore list that uses a backend API that we created and stores it as JSON. So again, all this API stuff is outside the scope of this course. It is good to kind of see what's going on because we consume APIs, right, on the front end. So it's nice to know kind of how these work so that when we use them over here, we know what's happening. But yeah, when we start doing our individual projects, which will be a little bit different and not guided like the projects that we've been working on so far, it's going to be maybe something that we need to look into or want to look into as we're building our own stuff. So maybe a simple API to do some sort of storage or other things. So anyway, hopefully that helps with Fetch, and hopefully this video worked because it's been like 40 minutes. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you guys later.